Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I wanted to get a chance to talk about love, life, and relationships, and to talk about today's topic, which we'll get into in a second. I have Miss Nomalanga Mushali Moses, who is the founder and CEO of HealthyBlackWoman.com. How are you doing today, Noma?
I'm doing great, boys. How are you?
I'm doing really well, really well. Now, you wanted to talk about this thing with Mary J. Blige, and apparently, Mary and her husband have pretty much let the public know that, and I have to find her husband's name. We have to look that up. They pretty much let the public know that they don't allow each other to have friends of the opposite sex. And some people thought that's a good idea. Keep the clamps on, keep them. You got to watch them like a hawk. And then some people said that's crazy. That's possessive. It's overzealous. It's insecure. What did you think when you saw it?
Well, I actually saw somebody alluding to that article on my Facebook. I was scrolling through Facebook and saw somebody, and that caught my attention, and I actually felt compelled to comment. And the person who was talking about it felt that it was ridiculous. And my comment was something to the effect of, actually, it's not ridiculous. The first thing is there's no cookie cutter way to approach marriage. So we don't know what the details of Mary J. Blige and her husband are. And again, if they like it, I love it. So if it works for them, then it works. And another thing is, they probably made that rule, if you want to call it a rule, based on who they are, who they know each other to be, and their wants and needs, and to eliminate maybe potential threats to their marriage. And, personally, as a married person, I always feel that you have to eliminate potential threats by whatever means necessary.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that it seems like it's the kind of rule that might make sense from a practical standpoint. In what you're saying, eliminating threats. But it seems like it's something that people don't want to hear in a seemingly sophisticated modern society, right? Because we're so advanced, people should be above the primitive instincts to be attracted to the opposite sex. If you're committed to some set of ideals that tells you to be devoted to one person, physically and otherwise, then those ideals should never if they become shaky in the presence of a temptation, it's because you're just a weak person. It's not because you're just human. Do you think that we're kind of lying to ourselves that we sometimes think that we're not going to have attractions when we're around other people for a prolonged period of time, and then it happens and it blows up in our face? I mean, are people kind of lying to themselves about this sort of thing?
I don't think anybody's necessarily lying to themselves. I just think people are different. There are people there's people who have eating compulsions, for instance, and then there are people who eat all green. And you can't put them in a room full of candy and donuts and burgers and expect them to respond the same way. So the same thing applies in every area of your life. You know your level of self-discipline. You know what your temptation is. You know what you're more susceptible to. And that's why I say there's no cookie cutter way. You have to know who you are. And then if you know that you're susceptible to something, remove yourself from a situation that could lead to you doing something that intellectually you're not supposed to do, and something that could potentially devastate your life. It's not the same for everybody. There's I've forgotten, Gandhi was said to have had been around a bunch of beautiful women and had no feeling of temptation, or even if he had the temptation, he did not act on it because he was so evolved in his spirituality or whatever. But not everybody's Gandhi. Then there's the opposite end of the spectrum. I know I'm being extreme with my examples, but the truth is you have to know yourself. And in any relationship that you have, trust is not absolute. It has levels. And that's what I heard a lot of. Oh, they must be insecure. She's insecure. He's insecure. They don't trust each other. All this other stuff. The truth is actually when you know a person, you know what areas to trust them to what degree in.
So, what does this say about the desirability of marriage? Because to me, when you get to the point where you say, a condition of marriage should be or could be that you're not allowed to have any friends of the opposite sex. What does that mean? That means that if you get married, and let's say you've got several friends of the opposite sex, you're having to destroy all these meaningful relationships built over a long period of time in exchange for one person. And I think that's kind of the challenge, I think, of marriage is the idea that this is a relationship that has to be entirely mutually exclusive in every way, physically and otherwise. And I think that's a pretty high bar, right? It doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it's right. I mean, it's a personal choice, but it seems that it just makes the world that much more complicated. And in fact, if you even think about, say a young guy who has, let's say he's a good-looking guy and he's got a lot of game or whatever, and he's got 10 women that all are appreciate him on some level. And let's say that he's not, I'm not saying he's sleeping with all of them, but let's say that all of them have some special connection to him in some way. And then he picks one and he says, this woman is amazing, and I want to marry her. And so someone says, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you do the right thing? Well, what if that guy is thinking to himself, well, wait a minute, if I marry her, I'm going to have to hurt 9 other people in order to be committed to this one person. So even though she's so amazing and she's so wonderful and I want to do the right thing, I don't know if I want to devastate 9 other people in order to satisfy one. I mean, is that just crazy illogical thinking I mean, it seems like that's kind of where we're going, right? If we get to that point where we start to expect that, look, you're going to destroy all the relationships you have with members of the opposite sex to be with me, it almost seems like that's going to reduce the likelihood that people are even going to want to get married, male and female. I mean, do you agree?
I think destroy is a very strong word. I think
think about this. No, seriously. If I say to you, I can't have. My wife says I can't have any female friends. You're my friend, so you can't be my friend anymore because I have a wife. I mean, what else how else can we describe that?
I'll give you a scenario. Let's say you're a married woman and you find something interesting about a male. It may be inappropriate for you to, dig into what's interesting, what's enchanting, what's this, because you're going into a very murky area there. However, if the guy happens to maybe be married, and he has a wife, and you think he's an interesting person all around, chances are you'll find that his wife is interesting. And you may be able to build a friendship with his wife, and he may be able to build a friendship with your husband. So the context of having that person in your life is very different than when you have just the two of you. So it's not like we shut you in a little cage and feed you through a little hole and you're not allowed to talk to anybody. Because, of course, people who thought that it was so ridiculous are going to paint that picture. But obviously that's not true. You still have meaningful relationships, but you have to be mindful of the context and the potential for error. I think it's actually very realistic to do that in the sense that you're being realistic. Like, look, I'm a human being. Even if intellectually I know that I'm not supposed to do something, there's a chance. I'm being realistic. I actually think it's more unrealistic for someone to say, I can have as many friends as I want. I can control myself. How do you think people get caught in these compromising positions? I would venture to say at least some of those people were people who at some point thought, oh, no problem. We can be friends, or we can hang out. We can go for dinner. We can have a couple of drinks. We can hang out at my apartment. We can hold hands. And, and it gets worse and worse and worse until you're in the front page of the newspaper if anybody cares who you are. So I don't think there's anything wrong with setting the parameters of, okay, this is acceptable behavior. This is not acceptable behavior. We also have to consider that they have 11 years together. Maybe that wasn't the case when they first got married, and they learned the hard way that, okay, maybe we can handle friends of the opposite gender, and maybe these are the parameters that you and I need. And by you and I mean Mary J. Blige and her husband. These are the parameters that we need to set to protect our marriage. And I want to reiterate again: there's no cookie cutter way. There's no one size fits all. But for me, I know that one of the things that you have to do if you're going to get married is protect your marriage at all costs. And if it means shutting down some of these things that you thought were okay, then so be it. Because those people who you feel like are your friends or whatever, they haven't committed to you forever. They're not building a family, a legacy. They're not invested in the well-being of your kids the way that your spouse is. There's a lot of, you've joined two different families together. And, when a man and a woman come together in marriage, his mom becomes your mom and so on, your cousins. It's a merger. It's a merger. So to minimize it, to say, oh, I'm just getting this one person and shutting down 9 relationships. No, you're not getting one relationship. You're merging 2 lives and everything that comes with it. And it is a big deal. So, yeah, you might have to say goodbye to a few friends because, yeah, this is a big deal and it's forever. And you have to keep reworking it to make sure that it lasts and that your children grow up in a wholesome environment. And yeah, you might have to let go of some friends to create that wholesome environment.
That was a really powerful, mesmerizing statement you made. I thought it was awesome. You literally shut down any effort I would have made to be the devil's advocate on that because what you just said is so true and so accurate and so great. And it's interesting because I heard a guy that was married for 4 decades. One time he just said, I never let my male friends even come to the house. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, because, human attraction is very powerful. And somebody who's, who you think is your best friend could still be attracted to your wife. In fact, it happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And he said, I wasn't going to let that happen to me under my nose, and I guess it worked for him. He stayed married, 40-something years, and I guess they're still going strong. And so, I think that maybe you're onto something. A marriage and a relation. And I think that's an important point, and it's something that you consistently and very wisely bring to every conversation about marriage. Is you remind people that marrying someone, being committed to someone is far deeper than just, oh, I think he's cute, so I'm going to go sleep with that person and spend time with that person. You're bringing together families, you're building legacies, you're creating an institution as opposed to just 2 people getting together, right?
Right.
So I like what you said. I'm not going to debate you anymore on that because I'd lose. So maybe Mary J and her husband are making the right decision. It does seem a little bit awkward, but hey, if it works for them, then so be it.
And just because we're on the topic of Mary J. Blige, let's not forget that Mary J. Blige has a career which spans decades, and her husband is her manager and partner. So any conflict that arises in that relationship doesn't jeopardize just him and her and their marriage. It jeopardizes the empire that they've built. You see, that feeds a lot of people. Creates jobs. There's just more, and I think the reason why I talked for so long just now was because I think that people tend to reduce a relationship or a marriage to, oh, it's 2 people, and once they don't feel like doing it anymore, they can just go their separate ways. What's the big deal? Or what if it feels uncomfortable? I'm not willing to be uncomfortable. Well, excuse me. It's a lot more than just the 2 people. It's a big deal. There's so much more to it. Just even with the Mary J example, they've built something beyond just their marriage. They've built a business. They've built I don't think they have kids, but if they do have kids, they've built something that will continue once they're gone. So jeopardizing that, they have to think very carefully, and they have to make very, maybe decisions we don't understand, but they have to make very specific decisions about this is how we're going to protect this thing that we've built, and this is how we're going to make sure that nothing threatens it. And to be honest with you, those of us on the sideline can point at it and laugh at it and what have you, but the show goes on for them, and they protect and continue with what they've built.
Wow, I love it. Very wise words, and people, in case you don't know, Noma knows what she's talking about. She's been married for, 9 years? Is that right? Yep. Now, when's the 10th year wedding anniversary? When's that?
In 3 months.
Oh, my God. Wow. So 3 months short of a decade. So anybody who doesn't want to hear what she has to say, email us and tell us about your 15, 20-year marriage and why your opinion matters more than Noma. Because if you can't do that, then you probably shouldn't say much. She knows what she's talking about. Well, thank you very much, Noma. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thank you all for checking us out at Your Black World. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.